All right, I want to kind of illustrate how you can think about these types in novel ways and extreme ways to give you a design vocabulary that is rich and surprising. And this is just playful. So, I'm going to start a new conceptual mass. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a trapezoid form. So if we think of the one-room house, what is a one-room house? And abstracted further, and perhaps we could say that a one-room house is a room with a roof on it, as two separate forms, room and roof, and that's all it is. But if we give ourselves freedom to define the room, the one room, in a different way and the roof in a different way, then we get something different. So, let's try that out. Let's start the same way we started before. We'll create a front and back. There's sort of a hidden text in Stephen Hall's book of American houses have a front. So there's this notion of frontality that seems to be very important in how we think about houses. So there's a front and a back. Back plane. And this time I'm going to make an axis of symmetry, bilateral symmetry. So I'll have a left and a right. And I'll go back and create some dimensions again. Whoops, need to be on the right drawing plane. So let's turn that stuff on again. And create aligned and so we've created those, and we'll set equal constraints. And notice that the equal constraints move around this center, these center lines. So those two reference planes are locked, pinned, as we say. So things move around them. All right. Now, I'm going to play around with this in some kind of extreme ways. One is I'm going to pull a front out from here. So this was called the front. I'm going to call this the facade. So we could imagine a sense of frontality where there is this facade element that is not part of the building, but is a facade. And so we've got the symmetry here. Or do I want to do it that way? I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to move this inside. And so we've got the symmetry of this element. And I'm going to create dimensions here. Equal constraint. Dimensions here. Equal constraint. Dimension here. And just for fun, I'm going to make it a square. So I'm going to call this square. Well, how about dimension square? And I'll make this one also dimension square so that it's a square. Now I'm going to get a little experimental. So I'm going to take this element and copy it again over here. And this one and copy it over here. And draw 2 dimension lines on it. And this is not a continuous dimension, but 2 separate dimension lines. And I'm going to call this offset left, and this offset right. So I can control those. Now I'm going to draw some reference lines here. One from here to this intersection. And then around to here and down to this intersection. And down to here and across. So I've got this 5-sided element here. And if I were to move this reference line, see what happens? By default, the endpoint snapped to that intersection and locked to it, which is what I wanted. So it's kind of neat. I can deform this edge by moving it back and moving that line back and forth. And similarly, I can move that one back and forth. And these are controlled by these offset parameters. And these are controlled by the square parameters. So now I've got a kind of unusual shape. And then we'll do something kind of similar. What we've been doing of taking the, creating an eave plane, eave, level eave, and put a dimension on that. So I'm going to click on that, go to create a dimension. And give it a name of height eave. And pick our little 5-sided figure and extrude it. And set the positive offset to be height eave, and it matches there. So then if we move this down, our form goes down too. So now instead of the usual square, we have a chamfered truncated element. So You know, is this a one-room house or not? Well, it has some characteristics. So, so playing around with that gives us something new and different. Now, I'm going to still need to create a roof. So by my rule that I created for myself, a one-room house has a room and it has a roof on top of it, two forms. So let's make a new form for the roof. And I've been playing around with that and came up with some very strange roof shapes. So, so let's try some of that. Let's go to this view, or this um, reference plane, and I'll spin it some here. Um, look at it from the left. Well, actually, let's look at it from the west. And I found I could create a roof that, you know, just for fun, I created an elliptical roof. So a partial ellipse, and snapped it to here, and snapped it to here, and snapped it to here, and and then I found I could do even stranger things to it. I want to try this. I'm not sure this will work. I can snap here and snap to the top of the ellipse. And change the height of the ellipse. And the bottom didn't stay where I meant it. So let's see if we can get it down there. Yeah, kind of got it down there. Yeah, constraints are not satisfied. But maybe that's this end point over here. Well, that may not work. We'll see. But I did find that I could pick this, I could take the endpoint and move it over here, and it would snap to that, and I could lock it on that. And watch what happens here. If I move this element, then not only the front moves, but the ellipse moves. And ellipse moves in somewhat strange ways. And I'm not real certain if there's a way how to control that. But, you know, height, ellipse, maybe. Seems to work. Cool. All right. And I'm going to hide my lower mass as I've done in some of the other videos, just so I don't accidentally snap to it. And I'm going to create another reference line from this endpoint across to here and up to here. And see if it snapped properly. I don't know. see what happens when we push these parameters around. Kind of works still. That one's not right. So I need to move that down here, and hopefully it will snap now, or it's locked now. It says it's locked. Okay. So now I've got an elliptical shape for the roof, which I think is kind of cool. And it can be deformed in several ways, two ways, with the parameters. Now I need to, well, it's still not quite working. This isn't locked the way I want it connected. So let's try. No, don't know. Well, let's create a form. Okay. So we created a form. And no, it didn't create a form. That's annoying. But I can try again. Create the form. There. So it created a form. And I'm going to go to the south view. And play around with this some. Going to lock this face to there and lock this face to there. And I have kind of a interesting shape. So I have this facade here, grand facade on one side, and then it erodes away much more informally in the back, but it's all covered by a continuous roof. So I think it's kind of neat. And, you know, as a one-room house. And if I go to family types, I can play with that. Hopefully it won't break. But I've got to test it. That worked. Change the eave height. And notice I'm changing it by small amounts. These things tend to break when there's dramatic changes. So if I make a small change, maybe it won't break. These offsets, can't see what it did. Well, we'll have to look in a minute. This offset, let's change it to 8 so it's different from the other one. And that one worked. So, so it seems to all work. And here we've created a very novel one-room house. Now, there are all sorts of other things one can do here. I haven't used any voids yet. I could create void objects. I could create void objects to make it hollow if I wanted to, and then I would have surfaces on the inside to apply walls. I could create a void object to put a chimney up through. I could just erode away the shape with voids. I could add additional solids to it. But it's only limited by your imagination. What do you want to do? I could actually create curved walls here. But I'm just kind of explaining to you that the shape I made has a architectural theory significant, an idea of beauty behind it, and that is there's a facade. If the street is over here, there's a facade. I walk from the street to the front door. That is a very American kind of pattern and form. And the back of the house is a little more informal. I could erode it away in the back. In fact, I think that's probably would be a good idea to erode it away with some subtractions, some other kind of odd permutations and changes. But that's kind of how we live too in America, that the suburban house has its front facade facing the street. The back of the house is a little more informal and chaotic and arbitrary, more personal. And then it's all covered by these grand roofs. So here we have this grand roof form that reads as its own form on top of it. So, so I'm kind of, I kind of like it the way it is. And maybe tomorrow I want to change it, but right now I think it's good. So this is an example of a third version of a one-room house, of Stephen Hull's one-room house. And so this is what I'm looking for. These are meant to give some simple solutions and then some more tantalizing solutions that you could explore. But you don't have to get this complicated. You can keep it really simple, and I will be very happy. And in fact, composing a more complex composition out of various simple forms has a long history of an argument that is beautiful.